Iniziativa molto intelligente perché arrivava direttamente alle famiglie.
It was a very intelligent initiative because it got through to the families directly.
Mezzo secolo di emigrazione.
After half a century of emigration, there were hundreds of thousands of Italian families in America.
In America e quindi ricevere.
So, to receive a letter of encouragement from them, a letter stating that they shouldn't vote for the Communist Party, well, that was very influential.
Letter writing was not enough. The newly created CIA decided to take the offensive.
What the CIA needed was authority to develop a program of covert action. General Marshall knew that the situation in Italy was critical. The largest communist party in the world outside of the Soviet Empire. Not having an organization and knowing that the State Department could not achieve the things that he knew had to be done, he personally said, we must explore the means of getting authority to carry out a covert action program that would challenge this tremendous communist threat.
This led to a debate within the young CIA. Did it have the legal authority to carry out covert operations? CIA lawyers studied the wording of the new National Security Act.
If the president of the National Security Council, the head of the National Security Council, is the President of the United States, and if he specifically directs the CIA under Hillenkotter to carry out operations to help Democratic parties, and if the Congress that was put in, if the Congress gives the money to support such a thing, then the authority is there. And that was the green light.
The CIA then intervened. It began covert operations in support of anti-communists and of the Christian Democrat Party.
I was in that branch of the CIA at the time that had to rush into the breach without training in covert action. And we had bags of money that we delivered to selected politicians to defray their political expenses, their campaign expenses, for posters, for pamphlets.
Io direttamente non sono a conoscenza di questo.
Personally, I'm not aware of that. It was spoken of, but I don't know anything about it, because I was never directly involved in party affairs.
The Church, too, mounted a powerful campaign against the communists.
Pope Pius XII was very concerned about the Communist Party. Not so much about their politics. He was concerned about their doctrine. And as Pope, Pius XII had to be concerned about what was happening in Italy at the time.
A network of election committees was created. They worked in close parallel to the organization of the Catholic Church.
I can say that all the parties envied our electoral structure, and especially the creation of election posters. In the rural areas, there were no cinemas. It was unthinkable at that time. So we had this idea. We sent some lorries out into towns and villages, and we projected the films at night, electioneering films. When we showed those films, everybody used to rush to the squares where the films were projected. They were always very crowded.
They unleashed this tremendous campaign against the left, against the communists, against the socialists, and they told the most terrible lies about them. things out of this world. The church had a great influence over the people because 90% of them were Catholics and members of the church.
Ma io in quel periodo lì
At that particular time, I was a practicing Catholic.
cattolica praticante.
I was extremely rigorous about attending
Non
Mass.
mancavo mai
I never missed it.
domenica ad assistere alla messa.
One Sunday I went to Mass,
Una domenica
and the priest was preaching from the pulpit,
ricordo questo
and he said one sentence which struck me very deeply at the time.
pulpito e nella sua
I still
predica,
remember it.
mi ha colpito questa
He
frase
said
che la
that the
ricordo.
war against the communists was a holy
La
war.
guerra contro i comunisti era una guerra santa.
Pope Pius XII and the Catholic Church had supported the fascists throughout their decades of rule. But the Vatican totally opposed communism. Just days before the election, Pius XII excommunicated many members of the Italian Communist Party.
Quando ho avuto notizia di questa cosa mi sono sentita
When I heard about it,
terribilmente
I was terribly
sconvolta.
upset.
In primo luogo,
To begin
il
with,
fatto
there was the
che
fact that at the
allora
time I was engaged to my fiancé.
fidanzata con mio marito si parlava
We were getting married the next year,
successivo.
and this meant we couldn't get married in
Permesso
church.
di sposarsi in chiesa.
Il Papa Pacelli Pio XII
Pope Pius XII excommunicated us.
ufficialmente come pontefice
Communists
scomunicò
and the friends of
i
communists.
comunisti, gli amici dei comunisti,
Non potendomi sposare in chiesa.
Not being able to marry in church
bianco,
meant I couldn't wear a white dress
fiori,
and have all the flowers,
suonava.
have the music playing.
Mio zio, che era quello che mi aveva fatto da padre, da bambino.
My uncle, who had been like a father to me when I was a child,
ma anche perché
couldn't even take me to the altar.
come cattolica
Not to mention that as a Catholic, I very much believed that my marriage had to be blessed by the priest,
che poi diventava mio
who
marito,
represented Christ on earth. And this was what I believed in.
che rappresentava quel Cristo in terra al quale io credevo.
Ma lei sa che in un discorso più XII...
You know that Pius XII, in one of his speeches, said you were either for Christ or against Christ.
Il Partito Comunista era contro Cristo.
And the Communist Party was against Christ.
Quindi vorrei dire
They were clearly atheists. So, it was a duty of the Pope and of the Church to protect their people.
c'era altra protezione.
So there was no other protection on the part of the Church but to organize all the Christian movements to oppose the Communist Party.
Contro il Partito Comunista.
On April 18, 1948, Italy went to the polls. The Christian Democrats won a landslide victory. Italy would remain a member of the Western Alliance. The communist share of the vote was almost halved.
ho pianto moltissimo
I cried so much.
perché avevamo
We'd worked so hard to win this battle.
un risultato di
It had been such an effort.
insomma questo confronto.
I remember crying and crying and crying.
Pianto moltissimo, insomma.
La vittoria fu superiore a quello che
The victory was even greater than we had expected.
è l'unica volta
It was the only time when we, on our own as Christian Democrats, had an absolute majority in Parliament.
il Parlamento.
The CIA, too, drew its conclusions from the election victory.
Well, it was very gratifying. We didn't know at that time that we had carried out the first political action, covert political action program in the history of American intelligence that would be followed by many, many, many more.
Now that Italy had elected to stay in the Western Bloc, the United States released a flood of martial aid. In Turin, the Fiat Motor Company received giant new assembly line machines from Detroit and Pittsburgh. Fiat was re-equipped with some of the most sophisticated machinery in Europe. Fiat's recovery would fuel the revival of Italian industry.
In Europe and in Italy especially, we thought of America as all-powerful. They had 50% of the world GNP, they had all the modern technology, they'd beaten the Nazi system. And I don't say that you didn't expect it, but we were pleasantly surprised to see the generosity of their foreign policy. And the generosity of their foreign policy at that moment was expressed through the Marshall Plan.
The Marshall Plan also demonstrated the United States' desire to secure Europe's future. The message was, modernize your economies, and you too can be like us.
The Americans were trying to impose American ideas, American organization into Europe. There was a feeling that if the European economies were to be rebuilt, if Europe was to be competitive in the world economy again, it would have to imitate American production methods, American management methods, and so on. And many European businessmen were eager to do this.
In those years, I mean, the immediate post-war years, the whole of Europe was in a recession. So first of all, it helped us step out of a recession. It gave us a certain amount of speed to the economy. But that was the first step. The second real step that was it approached this European community on the whole. It brought us towards NATO, and it brought the European countries closer to each other and to the United States.
The Marshall Plan set out to build a European consumer society. The United States wanted a free enterprise Western bloc, peaceful, united, and tied to American trade and capital. The Soviet Union was forced to build its own rival bloc. The people of the socialist countries would eye the West for 40 years and wonder.